second part of the Thomas thing. But maybe first, why am I telling you again this? Because, you know, throughout the classes we've had together, in the previous semesters as well, I've seen people who have done a long research about the passage, but if I ask them specific parts, you know, like, okay, but why, what is this vocabulary, if you know, what is this here, isn't it contradictory to the previous one? You know, when I really dive into the text, people don't know. So, you know, they have become specialists in let's say the Raven without reading the Raven. You know, it doesn't make any sense. Okay, so that's the reason why I'm making this video. But maybe you think to yourself, but if I don't go to other people, if I don't get some help, what if I misunderstand the guy? What if, you know, the poem, I think it's a poem about being afraid of a raven, and it's actually a poem about death and about, you know, sorrow. What if that happens? And then I can tell you, look, that's life, you know? Maybe you'll be wrong, that's okay. Maybe you will see something, you know, the other critics haven't seen so far, and that's even better, right? But the fear of misinterpretation cannot stop you from really having contact with a book, you know? And sometimes you can't imagine how delightful this process is. You know, I read the poem and then I think, wow, that's a poem about being afraid in the dark, you know? And then I will read it again and say, wait a moment, but there's also this thing about Lenore, who is his lost bride. And then I read it again and say, wow, but he's very sad as well. Look, your first impression was not nullified because of your other impressions, right? It's a poem about, you know, being afraid during the night, but it's also a poem about grief and etc. etc. Or maybe your later perceptions will correct your earlier perceptions. And again, that's not a problem. It meant that you have a history, a real history with the piece, you know? It's like, oh, when I first read it, I thought this was about, I don't know, a computer. But then I realized that actually it was about this and that and that. And I realized that because I saw this passage here. Or because after I read it many times, I went to the net and then there was this guy who told me this specific thing, right? So again, you have a personal history with, for example, the poem. So, in the end, what I want to tell you is, don't be afraid, okay? And be advised. It's hard. I know it's hard. You know, people are different. You know, maybe Thomas doesn't speak the kind of language I do, you know, the way he speaks. So, but then if I just can see Thomas through the eyes of somebody who speaks a language I do, remember, I'm not talking about language like idiom, right? I see the way he communicates. So if I can just know things about Thomas, if I hear from somebody who speaks in the same way I do, so I'm not getting to know different people, you know? I'm just hearing different things from the same person, let's say, from the critics that I feel affinity with, right? And what is the big challenge of literature? The big challenge, right, of literature, one of the biggest challenges of literature is getting out of your own world, you know? And diving into a world you don't know. Literature, remember, will give you experiences you have never had before, right? Literature, through the power of imagination, will show you how is it like to be in a war, even though you have never been in a war before. Okay, and if the author is good, that war is going to be very real. Okay, that's the power of literature, and that's the power of language. Okay, but let's imagine I want to know about being in a war, but I have to hear from another person who puts those conceptions in a way that I can understand. You know, being in a war is like when you are on Facebook and then somebody dislikes something, and you know, haters, and it's so you kind of culturally translate that experience. So we are not talking about the war anymore, at least not in the sense of the original author had intended. Okay, so guys, hard work, that's what it takes to visit those other worlds and to really have contact with those other people.